My name is Gabe Trujillo. I'm 27 years old and I live in Phoenix, Arizona.
I'm sorry, hold on a second.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're ready when you are.
Okay. Well, I guess my experience of being in a wheelchair began in September of
I'm sorry,
1997.
Gabe. I actually wasn't rolling when you introduced yourself just then. I was
Okay.
just checking for audio. Can we try
Okay.
again?
Yep. My name is Gabe Trujillo. I'm 27 years old and I live in Phoenix, Arizona. Well, my experience of being in a wheelchair began in September of 1997. I was 14 years old. I was your average kid from Arizona. I enjoyed playing sports, hanging out with friends, doing everything that everybody else enjoyed. But in September of 97, I started to develop a little bit of a cold. Nothing too minor, nothing too major. I just was ended up developing a little bit of a cold, went to the doctor's office. They said everything was fine, not to worry about it. It'll just run its course and you'll be fine in a couple days. After a couple days, it continued to get worse. And because I had asthma, I had a danger of developing a pneumonia whenever I developed a cold. So that was always on the back of my mind, and I was a little worried about that. So as the days went on, my cold continued to get worse. And on September 12th, 1997, my lungs seemed to feel like they were being weighed down by anvils. I couldn't breathe hardly at all. So that morning, it was about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I stumbled out of bed and went into my dad and mom's room and told them that I needed to go to the emergency room. My breathing was starting to get really labored and intense. So my dad jumped out of bed, drove me to the hospital, and we got into the intensive care unit over at Desert Samaritan Hospital. And they tried everything they could. They gave me numerous breathing treatments, numerous medications, and nothing seemed to get my breathing improved. Um, while we were there, everything continued to get worse, and finally they decided to airlift me over to a local children's hospital in downtown Phoenix. So we went with the helicopter. They flew me over to the local children's hospital, and they rushed me over to the intensive care unit right away. Once I got there, my breathing continued to get worse. Nothing seemed to make it better, and before I knew it, my right lung had collapsed, and I ended up drifting into a coma. When I woke up 4 days later, I found out that I had lost the ability to move my arms and legs. It was quite a jostling experience, but um, it was something I had to deal with. So I ended up spending about a month in the intensive care unit, and I tried to try and regain any lung capacity that I could. At that point, I was connected to a ventilator through a trach in my neck to help me breathe. And while I was there in the intensive care unit, I tried to build up my lung strength so I could try and learn to breathe on my own all over again. After the first month in the intensive care unit went off, I started to improve a little bit more, and they decided to transfer me over to the subacute unit over at their hospital. It was basically just a place for kids who were well enough to be out of the intensive care unit, but not fully recovered enough to go home. So while I was there, I was still paralyzed from the neck down. I did numerous rounds of physical and occupational therapy to try and regain any movement back in my arms and legs. I slowly started to regain little functions in my fingers and toes, but nothing really drastic enough to help me get out of a wheelchair. I ended up spending 8 months in the hospital, slowly learning how to breathe all over again and trying to regain any type of strength that I could. I was finally released from the hospital in May of '98. Um, now I had to use an electric wheelchair to help me get around. It was quite a new experience for me, but I learned to adapt quickly and was glad that I was released finally 8 months later. Once I was out of the hospital, I went back to school and I ended up graduating on time with my classmates in high school in 2001. After high school, I ended up going to Arizona State University and got a degree in journalism, and that's pretty much the story ever since.
Sure.
When I was first in the hospital, doctors had no idea what would have caused my paralysis. They went through a numerous amount of diagnoses, from Guillain-Barré to acute asthmatic steroid myopathy, but none of the diagnoses seemed to work. After about 2 years later from when I was first released from the hospital, a doctor did some more tests and started to look over for some other research and determined that I was diagnosed with Hopkins disease. Basically, Hopkins disease is a rare form of polio that's prevalent in asthmatics. And what happens is, after severe asthmatic episodes, your nervous system shuts down. And after the episode, once your nervous system reboots, for some reason you end up losing the function of a limb. There are less than 30 known cases in the world of this particular disease, and generally when this occurs, it normally only affects one limb, whether it be one arm or a leg. But in my unique case, as it were, I am right now the only documented case in the world with all four limbs affected. Because this is such a rare disease, there is still a lot of research that needs to be done, but doctors are optimistic that there is going to be a cure eventually, and with spinal cord research and other type of medical advances, that hopefully one day soon we'll be able to figure out a cure and get me out of this wheelchair and see if I can learn how to walk again. Well, since this is being shot on a Saturday, I guess I would go over my daily routine on the weekends. I get up early in the morning. I'm kind of a early bird, as it were. I get up around 7 o'clock, just hang out for a little while, and then later on around 10 o'clock I go over to my therapist's office and do an hour's worth of physical therapy. Even though I am not up and walking around, it's still very important that I maintain whatever muscle tone that I have and try to avoid any further atrophy in my arms or legs. And it's also nice to work out and feel like I'm exerting myself, and being a part of some physical activity is always nice. After that, I head over to the gymnasium and practice power soccer. It's an electric wheelchair sport that's played for people with disabilities. It's similar to regular soccer, but we just play on a basketball court with 4 team members. It's very cool. Before I got sick, I was a very athletic person and enjoyed playing sports. So when I stumbled across this, I was very ecstatic that I was able to participate as a part of a team again. And I've been doing it for about 5 years now, and it's been an absolute blast. After that, I come home, catch up on schoolwork or any other work-related activities that I might have slacked off on during the week. And then other than that, I hang out with some friends, go to the movies, and then afterwards just come back and chill and relax and get ready for the work week the following week.
Okay.
So what do I love? First and foremost, my family and friends. As you can imagine, becoming confined to a wheelchair is a very traumatic experience, and I don't know what I'd do without my mom and dad or my brother, my grandparents, aunts and uncles, and even my close group of friends. People aren't lying when they say that you need a good support system to overcome such adversity. So all the stuff that they've done for me and all the help that they've been able to give, also just their companionship, is something that I really treasure and am thankful for, and that's a big reason why I love them. Also, I love vinyl figures. As you can see, I'm a huge self-proclaimed geek, as it were, so comic books and video games, anything techie is on my must-love list. So those are just a few of the things that I love. What makes me laugh? Romantic comedies, I guess. Will Ferrell makes me laugh. My friend Tony, he's a class act. one time in particular, he was sitting around the table with a friend and I, and we were eating chicken wings, and he wanted to show me a trick. So one of his friends ended up putting a whole hot wing in his mouth, and no more than 5 minutes later, he had taken every bit of meat off that chicken wing and spit the bone out clean as a bone. There was not 1 ounce of meat on there, and the whole trick of it was he did it without using any of his hands. It was quite a treat, and I try to take things not too seriously. Um, it's important that I maintain a sense of humor, um, even though there's not much to laugh at if people see you in a wheelchair, but I try to just laugh things off. If you don't have a sense of humor, then there's really not much enjoyment you get out of life. I try to find a reason to smile almost every day of the week. Afraid of? Uh, that's quite a question. I guess the future is a big thing that I'm afraid of. Being in a wheelchair, you see a lot of people overcoming adversity. I know there are some people that I know who are confined to a wheelchair where just seeing tomorrow is achieving some sense of victory. Uh, while I'm in this chair, I want to just be normal. I go to work just like everybody else. I have a 9 to 5 job just like everybody else. So the one thing that scares me is just feeling like an outsider, not really being a part of society. I know when I'm walking around, I definitely notice the stares and the looks and the points, and trying to get people to realize that even though we're in a wheelchair, we're just like them. Uh, we have the same problems, we have the same dreams and goals, and so there's not much I am afraid of after coming so close to death and having such a traumatic experience. But if there is one thing that keeps me up at night, it's trying to understand what's going to happen tomorrow. I guess one thing people should take away from a day in my life is to just be patient. Um, Things will happen, and take it one step at a time, I guess, or in my case, a roll. Um, Also, a big thing that I learned is it's really easy to worry about everything and everything. And for me, there's always people in worse situations. Um, I learned that you got to live life the way you want to live it, even though things happen and they might take you off the path that you're looking for. You just got to make the best of what you have. I've tried every day to live life the way I want to, and if it's not going to lead me in a place that I want to go, I just simply make the best of it, because it's not the things that you want that are important, it's what you do with what you have. And if I've learned anything, it's that to appreciate anything and everything that happens in your life. Even if it's good or bad, everything happens for a reason.